Irish soul really is. Well, now I have arrived at the place many tourists will see when they come to Ireland for the first time, Dublin.
Took the video.
Now, while most people probably don't
Oh my
recognize ancient Ireland as Dublin, they think about Newgrange, they think about the stone circles, they think about the West Coast, which we've been showing you in the series so far. However, there is our time of the Hill of Ishnach. Today, we'll be talking about the history of Dublin's earliest days and taking you with us on a trip to the National Museum to see what secrets lie inside. And if you stick around to the end of the video, you may even get a glimpse of one of the rare events in Ireland and our explorations of ancient Ireland here in Dublin. While it's commonly known that Dublin was founded by the Vikings, there is evidence, both written and archaeological, that some form of settlement existed here, at least to some extent, before the Vikings invaded. But it was the Vikings who officially established the town as we know it today. Dublin was first used as a wintering port by the Vikings in 841 CE. The Vikings would then use this place to stage their raids and campaigns against the Irish until they were kicked out in the year 849, only to return a year later with a large fleet to take back the city of Dublin. The city went through a mini series of rulers over the next 100 or so years of history. These Vikings were not only using this place as a place to wage war, but also as a port to build their ships and trade with the wider European countryside. Many graves have also been found around Dublin of the Vikings who were buried here according to their pagan customs, showing that the Viking Age beliefs made its way to Ireland as well. Dublin was a place of war, but also trade, and a place of military control over Ireland. The Vikings would not quite make it to a century of rule, as they were officially removed as rulers in the years there in Ireland. There were two Viking ages, the second one beginning in 914, as the Vikings returned with a massive force to wage war once again on the Irish. The Irish would suffer many great defeats to the Viking invaders. It would be until the year 976 that the Vikings would finally be defeated and removed from Ireland, leading to many years of peace, until the descendants of the Vikings, the Normans, invaded only 100 years later. So this museum goes pretty quickly into the medieval. Like the downstairs is mostly on Dublinia, the founding of Dublin by the Vikings, and then quickly into the Norman conquest with Strongbow. So the museum itself, I mean, I'm a little jaded at this point. I've seen a lot of museums across Europe. This one's okay, but it's nice to see something talking about the history of Dublin and the fact that it was founded by the Vikings. And it's very complicated history with lots of wars and battles, which hopefully I was telling you more about as this in the voiceover, because it's something that's really hard to transcribe in an in-person video. But I hope you've enjoyed this footage. The actual museum, it's been really nice. Not a lot of artifacts like this, like recreation things. I really want to encourage you, if you're getting into paganism, spirituality from the Norse perspective or the Irish perspective, it's so much more complicated. There's so many more layers. Just make sure you're really digging into it. History is really fascinating. And that's how I came into spirituality. That's how I came into paganism, is from my love of history. And the Scandinavian, Norse, Viking era, interacting with the Anglo-Celtic Isles. This is a really interesting point in history, and I think that's why so many people get interested in paganism. But it isn't just one thing. There's many layers, many stories, many kings, many battles, many heroes. And so it's just always fun to learn more about that. And now with Dublinia finished, Kevin and I worked our way through the crowded streets of Dublin to seek out some older history, and perhaps even some information on the mythology of Ireland itself, even though we don't know much about the mythos before the Christian scholars. All right, so having left Dublinia is cute, is the best way I would describe it. But again, the history is very interesting. What I'm hoping is the archaeology museum is going to have a lot more interesting artifacts itself, hopefully by the name. But what I'm really hoping for going into this is stuff talking about the ancient Irish mythologies, things pertaining to that, but also things that are very similar to the Bronze Age that I've seen in other places across Europe. Things such as the bronze shields, bronze weapons, idols to gods, anything that would give us any kind of evidence to the practices of the Bronze Age. Because even though we know a lot about its mythos, we don't know that much beyond a certain point, and it's the same for the Scandinavian. We really don't know that much information before it was written down by the Christian scholars, by the monks. And so our ability to sit here and guesswork at what they were doing at Newgrange, what they were doing at the stone circles, is very, very limited. So anything, anywhere in the world that can give us any evidence towards what was happening in the pre-Christian in the museum itself, sharing with you my thoughts in the moment. Or Kevin very quickly pointed out there were many signs that said no filming. So I decided to be a little sneaky instead. The Museum of Dublin is first and foremost free, which I always appreciate. However, it's not only free. There are many artifacts in here, not just of Ireland, but also from around the world. And while I had hopes of finding more religious artifacts than I did, I was still very happy to find a few that stood out to me. But rather than discuss this over voiceover, I thought it would be good for a nice cold pint of beer.
Back in the day, maybe not to a great extent because of the nature of it, but it would have been happening because that was something that in Edinburgh, in Germany, like there was Christians and pagans living side by side, and that's one of the theories why the Mjolnir came to be, because the Christians were identifying themselves with the cross, and the pagans needed something to identify themselves, so they started using the Mjolnir with Christians.
Right, as a way to identify themselves after the others came in. Yeah.
And you got a nice Guinness mustache.
Oh no, that's I keep it there for it.
You're spitting.
The other thing I did find interesting at Dublin was they said like the number of Viking. So it's pretty much it was very much the men coming over, raiding, trading, and then marrying locals. Marrying locals.
Colonization.
Correct.
Yeah, in the sense of like in England, or the Wessex, Sussex, and all those things, Mercia, Northumbria, they were coming to settle for the farmland. Whereas Dublin, it was a little bit further. It was on the west, like the western seas, more so than the east. So it'd been much harder to get to as a colonizer than a trader. But, you really need to travel a bit further to trade.
Right, and the fact that the trade route they took was around the coast of Scotland, down the Isle of Man, through the Irish Sea to here to Dublin. So it was a lot of interacting between here and the Mediterraneans and the continental Europeans coming up.
Yeah. So moving on to the archaeology, the archaeology museum. How did you like this one?
Much better.
A lot of
artifacts. The amount of gold. There was a whole exhibit just for the gold found in Ireland. Some of them were really cool. You can see them. Some of the things throughout different cultures. And like that was good. And then there was a stone with 3 heads carved into it on 3 sides.
Well, I already put it on Instagram. I think that was the most important pagan artifact there to me. And the reason I think this is because Bronze Age into the Iron Age pagan eras were very ambiguous of what they were. Lots of abstract shapes and designs.
And animals,
which we didn't see that much either. So compared to like the Pictish were design animals over in Scotland, which is why again people the Picts, it's just Celtic. It's like it's still unique because here we are in the heart of the Celtic identity, and there are no artifacts representing animals. I didn't see one that represented an animal.
No, I don't think so.
No, not even into the Christian era. I didn't see any animals. I think there were some birds eventually, but I think for the most part it stayed to the geometric designs.
Yeah, the lozenges and the swirls and everything.
Some crescents.
The other thing I found really interesting at the museum was the bog bodies. Was it criminals being buried? Was it sacrifices? A way to honor the person?
Right.
Who knows? But like how preserved some of them are. You can see the hair. They're like tinged dyed red.
Wouldn't it be quite interesting if they were the criminals? And so here we are looking at the criminals of the society, not the kings.
Yeah,
that is really interesting. I mean, bog bodies in general, again, this is where we get into that Celtic terminology, they've been found across Europe, into Scandinavia, into Germany, basically anywhere there's been a bog, people have thrown bodies into it. We don't know why. There's theories of why they've been doing it, whether it's human sacrifice, punishments.
Whether they went out collecting peat and just got stuck in the bog and sank.
I remember reading one thing when it came to Scotland is the bog bodies. One of the theories is that it was a way to preserve people for the family. And so they would actually put a body in a bog, and then after about 18 months, ride the body out. And then they would take the body out and put it in the family home. It was a way to preserve the feeling and connection to the ancestor. And so you would just have bog bodies in the house. And so perhaps these bog bodies are the ones that Yes, that's the interesting thing about history is something, me putting on my archaeology hat is even though archaeologists obviously know more, they're much more research and have more education than I do. Learned. We don't know 100% the truth. No. Yeah, and there are multiple theories, and you're going to see it in every museum you go to. They have different theories, and archaeologists don't agree either.
Right. I mean, there's instances of the thrice-killed man that was found in a bog, obviously a ritualistic sacrifice. is definitely it. But the other ones, who knows?
Yeah. Well, I think of like there was the totem in there, which I feel like was even though I'm sitting here like this is really rare. A wooden totem from before, like 1000 or 100 BC or whatever it was. I can't remember quite. But in Scotland, only found one. So why is this one not giving prominence? Huddersfield is one of the most important figures in the Scottish National Museum.
And powerful
To see. Yeah. And this one, the way it was limited and its ability to look at it and observe it was really weird. And the information, this is something you were critiquing, the information was very limited.
Yeah.
It's like, what was this?
They're smaller ones.
Definitely have your phone.
Like sun medallions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they said they always came in pairs, and it did have like the sun cross on.
Oh, yeah, definitely had the solar cross in it.
Yeah, that was really interesting. And like they even had like design. I don't think I got a picture of it. That showed what they think people would look like with all this gold on it, and they even had like the gold gauges. And it looked very African tribal. Is this the artist imposing that culture into this? Don't know, but they definitely had tons of different.
I said some of the smaller ones were like. Through
the nose, lots of little earrings.
If you're making a spiritual trip through Ireland, stop in Dublin, just see the sights, connect with Ireland in the city.
In the cities, but make sure, you tune in. So we have still like 2.
As Kevin and I retreated to our camper van on the coast to some much-needed rest, I also took this time to step away and record a vlog for my YouTube and Patreon supporters just long before these videos came out here on YouTube. So hey, if that sounds interesting to you, why don't you slide on down and join up to see all past and upcoming vlogs, as well as Q&A videos that I offer exclusively on Patreon and YouTube members. Anyways, when I was heading back to the van, I received a text that the Northern Lights would be visible for the first time around Dublin to those who could get into the mountains quickly. Since I have never seen the Northern Lights in my life, I ran back, woke Kevin up from his nap, and took us into the mountains for one of the rarest astrological events in Ireland in over 50 years.
Here we are, the night before Ishnach. Night before the celebration of Yaltana. Best. We found a pretty amazing spot to do it. Again, I don't know. Oh my gosh, yeah. You can already start to see him a little bit.
The Irish are the ones who created.
Yeah, so we'll see. I'll show you any footage I'm able to get, but this is a pretty special moment for me.
Very cool in the sun, bonfires and all that. No, it's done all over, nearly all over the world. And they didn't use they used turnips. Jack-o'-lantern. No, anyway. That's it for now. Good luck. Until the next one, guys.